Hey everyone, so it's Dakini Doulas here again, and today we're interviewing Rebecca Campbell. She's really wonderful, and it's the first client of ours that we are interviewing. Me and Alex last year were your doulas. We're really happy to have you here with us today. And
Thanks guys, it's so lovely being with you, and I love you, and I love that more and more people can hear about just everything that you're doing. I love that you're doing this online thing.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're gonna just say a little bit about you. You're a writer, a creative and a visionary, and you lead workshops online. You do loads of amazing stuff online, and you're the author of several books and this amazing oracle pack, the Starseed Oracle. And we thought it would be a really nice way to introduce you to pick a card and have you do like a very brief little interpretation.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. So picking a card for us to access some wisdom for this moment. Okay.
Star Keeper, constant. See the light and stay grounded. Right. So, well, I mean, if you hold up the card, Cassie,
yep,
you can see right in the center there's a portal. It's a gateway. And I think in the context of our conversation today, it's like, I think we all know that pregnancy has the opportunity or offers us the invitation to be initiated. And I think the thing about initiations is that they take a lot of courage and they take a lot of faith, and it requires that we stand on the threshold of where we were or are, and then there's this big void, and then there's where we're being called towards. And I think I know no greater invitation and no bigger threshold than birth. Maybe it's because it's only 7 months ago, but it is absolutely the biggest initiation I've been through. You'll also see with that card, you can see like that dome, the sphere, it's like the egg.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that can be said about that egg wisdom, which of course is right in our bodies. And one of the greatest things that I think that both of you embody so greatly is that ability to hold space and trust the birthing energy, hold space and trust that the mother, even if she's not done this before, that if she trusts the birthing energy and breathes and opens through it and is really present with whatever is present, if she allows that to move through her, then she knows exactly what to do. And I think the thing I'm most grateful for in my birth that I had that support in the shape of both of you and other supporters in my life. And I think that it's so important. And birth is a metaphor for creativity. It's a metaphor for birthing ourselves. I think we're always birthing something, right? Mm-hmm. If we allow it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty powerful card for where we're at. It's like letting that birthing energy blast through us. And I think that is such a big concept, isn't it? It's kind of the easiest and hardest thing you could possibly do, allow nature to happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And actually, I'm going to put it up there. And yeah, you mentioned when you were just talking then the birthing energy, which is something I wanted to ask you about, because I remember you talking about that a lot, especially as you were approaching birth in the 3rd trimester, and also during birth and after birth. You talked about this birthing energy, almost like this presence unto itself, and your relationship with that. And I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about that, because I think that could be really useful energy for people to
I think that in the like in the final stages of the pregnancy, like before giving birth, like 3rd trimester, like right on the edge, there was this like in between time where it was like you're standing on the edge of a great cliff almost, and there's like almost like no going back. And so the only way is forward, and it's going to happen in some way or other. And yeah, it's kind of like, I'd say at that stage for me, it felt like having to fully lean into the in-between, which I think is really scary, because especially if you haven't done it before. I mean, I've only had one child, so I'm curious now to see what it would be like having a second, like if you would be in that, the extreme of the in-between there. And I think that like in that stage as well, like I remember some of the nights, some of the final nights, like in the last week, it's a bit of a blur. You kind of go in between the worlds, I think. And I remember one night I woke up and I was having trouble breathing. It wasn't quite a panic attack. It felt very natural and good. Like I was mentally sound and almost panicked in a way. Like part of me, the part of me that was trying to do the lists and get the house ready and all of that. And everyone I've spoken to, I've found seems to go through that phase where it's like, you got to do and then you realize the lists are not going to help me here. And I remember saying to my husband, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening. And I did know what was happening, but there was this part of me, the part of me that wanted everything in order and wanted to kind of like hold on to things as I went into the unknown. That part of me was dying, because I knew that part of me, I couldn't give birth the way I wanted with that part of me present. And so it was like a death, and it was like, it felt like the birthing energy, I think you mentioned it, like a wave, like an ocean. And it was kind of like pounding and crashing until you loosen the grip. And I remember that night, and I remember my husband saying, it's because part of you is dying in that way. And I'm like, how do you know that? That is so true. Yeah. And then like in the birth, I mean, I think compared to what I had expected, my birth went quite quick because my waters didn't break. I think that worked for me in a way because I wasn't measuring time as much as I probably would have had the waters come before. But I was hoping that I was in active labor, because I'm like, if this isn't, I don't know what is. And I remember being like in the throes of the increasing intensity, and just there was the moment, and I guess it must have been around the threshold moment. You guys probably have the right terms if I'm not using them.
Transition.
What did you say?
Transition moment.
Transition. The transition, it was that moment, and I remember saying, pray for me, I can't do this. And then you guys going, I could hear you guys in your mind going, oh yeah, this is about to happen now, because I'd read about that moment. But it was so true. It was like that extreme moment where the wave was just crashing more than my body could bear, and the only way through was to open through it, like to stay in life rather than resistance. And then it did feel like I had this moment where it felt like every cell in my body exploded.
Wow.
And now you could say that's a painful thing and that's a negative thing, or you could say every cell in my body opened and like said yes to life. And I remember in that moment, like almost like visualizing, like seeing, being connected at that moment with like all of the women in pain through the ages and all of the women in ecstasy through the ages. Like both were together. And yeah, I'd never had an experience before in my work. I'd had lots of like altered experiences. But I'd never had an experience remotely like that, which was so physical and so transcendent at the same time. And I think that that's incredible, and like that's the birthing energy to me. And it's, yeah, it was really like about, I think the most helpful thing was about allowing it. And I think, you know, having support like that you guys offer, like I remember Cass, you were like holding the base of my back because I remember that being quite sore, and I kind of didn't even know you were there, but I knew you were there. And I think like that's a great example of trusting the birthing energy and what you guys do so well. Like, yeah.
Wow, it's really emotional to hear you speak, actually, the way you're talking about the power of initiation and how we're asked to say yes to something that's so beyond anything we know, and the courage and the surrender and yeah, what it takes to allow something that's like an ocean crash and something that will explode our cells. It's so powerful. Yeah, what helped you during pregnancy to prepare for that moment of saying yes in that way? Do you feel like your work, the transformational soul work you've done for years now, helped you prepare, or was it something that happened in the moment that allowed you to open in that way? Or
so I think it like absolutely helped me, and I'd never done it before. And so I think what I found most challenging, and of course this is so my own experience, and I really respect that someone else can have a completely different experience, but for me, one of the biggest lessons I learned, like I've been studying intuition for some time, I can connect with soul, all of that stuff. But pregnancy was so physical, more, I mean, of course it's going to be physical, but it's more physical than I could have possibly imagined. And for me, my initiations really were before the birth, I think, as in probably 3rd, 4th, 5th month, when I had doctor's appointments, and my personal story there was I was kind of passed around from person to person, and then got a diagnosis of being put in high risk. I had a couple of diagnoses where I was put into high risk, into this bucket. And then when I actually looked at the results and all of that, it was more about numbers than it was actually about me. And now I really get that medical system is built around the best care for all together. But the invitation that I learned through it was all about body autonomy and sovereignty around my body, and trusting my body more than what the outside world is saying about my body. I think that was the bit, intuition around the body and my baby and all of that was such a steep learning curve. And the best thing I learned through the pregnancy. In the end, I mean, I did all the things that I was told to do, except I had a home birth. I was told not to have a home birth, which is why, and I feel I understand I'm very also fortunate that I was able to do that, and I was able to have support in order to do that, and not everyone can. But it was a huge growth for me, and because I think that when you're going for your first appointments as well, like I didn't know much about having a baby. I hadn't been the kind of woman who had said since she was a teenager, I just want to become a mum. I definitely played the mother role in a lot of my work, but having children was not like a thing that I knew I wanted to do until it came. And so I wasn't overly researched, but when I started going to my appointments, I started feeling like something wasn't right, like uncomfortable and kind of a little bit not seen through the process. But I think the thing that is so challenging when you're going through something that you haven't gone through before, of course you're going to look to people who are experts to guide you through it. And so the challenging bit was to kind of separate what I needed guidance on and when to trust myself.
Yeah.
And I think that concept of trusting the birthing energy is trusting that my body knew how to have a baby. And it was actually the mind part of me, the controlling part of me, the part of me that didn't have the life experience to trust that my body knew how to do it. And I guess you could say life knew how to do it. My baby knew how to do it. So that was the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, for people to kind of give away their agency, give away their power to other people who, you experts, but yeah, and ignore the actual ultimate authority of your own experience and your own body, and that's such a huge lesson and wisdom in the birthing experience, is meeting that. Yeah, and I love what you say about just birth being so physical. Of course it's physical, but I remember thinking this a lot with your birth in particular, how it really is like this combination of transcendent and immanence, like meeting, like really, and in that way it's such a like primal ceremony, like the most ancient ceremony. That's what I felt, the most ancient ceremony. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing. And yeah, just like I just remember that moment. I read something around how it's like there's that moment where the mother goes and fetches their child from the stars. And it is like that. And well, it was for me anyway. And while at the same time being so animal. Yeah.
And we were wondering if the experience of pregnancy and birth and meeting that birthing energy so potently has changed the way you relate to your work at all, or it's just brought anything new to that.
I feel like so I knew my calling since I was a young girl, And I was just so afraid to do it, basically, to share my voice. Like lots of work on the voice has been a big part of my path. And yeah, when I surrendered to my soul's work, things happened quite swiftly, and things grew quite quickly. And I'm very good at being courageous. And any fears I had around visibility and being seen, all of that, the more I did it, the more they went down. But there was still always this kind of, and I think a lot of us have it, this like scanning, like this, am I safe, am I safe, am I safe? Which I didn't realize until the pregnancy or post-pregnancy, because I always had it, right? I don't remember not having it. Since the pregnancy, or since the birth, I should say, I don't have that really anymore. I mean, I probably do a little bit, but I'm not constantly doing it. I'm aware that it exists because I'm not constantly doing it, which is incredible. And I think for me, what allowed that, obviously, like the birthing energy perhaps takes care of it in a way. But I think one of the big things I learned in order to give birth or give into the birthing energy was how important it was to feel safe and how important it was to be supported. Now, prior to that, I hadn't really realized how unsafe and unsupported I felt in my life. Now, that's not because I was unsafe or was unsupported. Quite the opposite, really. But receiving support as like someone who's very capable and, you know, just hardworking and just like, I'll do it myself. I know I've been like that since I was a little girl. I've got a really strong mum career woman, all of that, like independent. Receiving support has been such a challenge. And I think it is for a lot of women, a lot of people as well. And, you know, as you guys know, I knew that support was important. And so we organized the postpartum recovery support time, because I knew I was being called to go back to work in some capacity, but I really wanted to make sure that the recovery and the fourth trimester was really respected and honored by myself more than anyone. So yeah, I think that has been another incredible thing that has come through. And I think also with my work, I feel like I haven't, because of while we're recording this, we're in lockdown. And I had like a lot of workshops planned, etc. But they've had to be cancelled. But as I walk on my morning walks, I'm like, oh, I feel like I can hold a lot more energy now. And I can't wait to get in a room with people to see, like, because I think that capacity to maybe hold space might have shifted. It feels like it has. Yeah, and I think the pregnancy as well, you know, my background is all about working with souls. I can do soul reading, all of that stuff, right? And I remember people saying to me, oh, so if you connected with the soul of your son, and actually through the pregnancy, I was not guided to until right at the end. And again, at first I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, that's not like me. Is there something wrong here? Like, but now I see that it was like, you know, like so in my garden at the moment, I've got my favorite flower, peonies, and I adore them. They're like tight as a bud, like so tight. and they stay like that for so long, and then little by little they just like open and open and open and open. But if you like peel and try and peek at them too soon, you'll wreck them. And yeah, so it was like my syllabus anyway was actually just all about laying on the earth, being in my body. Like I had the pelvic pain pretty much the whole way through, so I couldn't even like go for walks. Like I literally was stationary for pretty much, I'd say like 6 full months. So yeah, that was my curriculum.
Yeah, birth is such an incredibly deep teacher in terms of helping us to reclaim our intuition and our connection with the power of nature and the power of life, the ultimate lack of control we have really over the power of nature and the power of life and the wisdom within us. And also you were saying about what a great lesson you had in seeing the support that is there for you, that you are receiving, and just being able to open to consciously receiving support in your life. I think that's a massive lesson for so many women and so many people. And it reminds me of Ram Dass, who before he had a stroke he was writing a book about how to give to others, and then after he had the stroke he realized actually he needed to learn how to receive, and that he now wanted to write a book about receiving from others and how much love is in that. And yeah, what I thought of as you were speaking.
Yeah, it's a flow, isn't it? When we struggle to receive from others, we're kind of blocking a flow of energy. And yeah, birthing and motherhood, you've kind of got to learn that. I mean, you don't have to, and some women like struggle more than others, but it seems to be a consistent lesson in just kind of opening up and learning to like, yeah, just truly open your heart to other support for the benefit of all beings, for the benefit of, you know, of your children, all of your relationships.
It's so true. Like even like it was like obviously like the support during the birth, but in postpartum, like one of the things that I think it's like I managed to sidestep something that I think could have been difficult, and that was, so I got the book The First 40 Days, as you guys know, and so my mum, I live in the UK and my family's from Australia, and so my mum was coming over for the birth. She actually arrived the day I went into labor. She went home and had a baby the next day. But what was really helpful, I think, with us was that I just kind of handed her the book and said, can you help me do this? And so, and I had spoken to my friend Holly, who her sister actually was having a baby at the same time. We had the same due date. It was just bizarre. And I think we've all been in situations like this, like say if we have a grieving friend or someone going through something, and you just want to help, but you just don't know how. And so I think that was really helpful with my mum, that I was able to go, can you help by doing this? Like being able to properly ask in like practical ways. And she was delighted to be able to do that. And I so relate to that myself, having been on other side of things and just not knowing what to do, you know?
So that's just such an important point you just made, because I think in so many different situations, people, you know, want to help and say like, how can I help? And that can just be a really overwhelming question, especially for a new mother. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm sure there are ways you could help, but like having to think about what those ways might be is like an extra pressure. So for people to say like, I'm going to leave some food on your doorstep, or you know, or just, yeah, in advance for a mother before she's had the baby to think of a list of things that she might want from people and let them know clearly, like you say, so it's tangible and practical. That's just such a gift. instead of something that's quite vague and open, which can just add to the overwhelm. That's a really, really valuable point. Yeah, I remember you having something on your fridge door as well, some really like beautiful points. I can't remember exactly what they were, but one of them was something about be practical, in your
oh yeah, as in like how to treat a pregnant woman or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we had a breastfeeding lady, like in our NCT, she gave us that. It was a printout, and she said, "Put this on your fridge." And it was basically, I mean, everyone who came to our house was amazing. We didn't have many guests in that first month, but yeah, it was like points on like, don't comment on their weight or their body.
Yeah.
Don't do this, don't do that. And yeah, it was interesting. I remember my father-in-law, because we have family obviously coming from the other side of the world, and that was also a thing for us to, I think in a way it was a lot easier for us to manage boundaries in that postpartum period, because we had to start planning them months before if we wanted our family to be able to be there. And so it was the timing of the grandparents, and do they stay in the house, do they stay somewhere else, like all of that stuff. So yeah, but I can imagine it being more challenging if I lived closer to people who would feel more like walking through the front door without knocking type thing. So, but yeah, I think having those boundaries set is so important, and I know it's difficult as well to assert yourself like that without feeling like you're going to offend someone, or
Yeah, and that's another lesson, isn't it? Actually, just having strong boundaries and knowing that strong boundaries are the most loving thing you can do and be and embody and like model. Yeah, especially during that time. And I think you did that really well during the baby moon, the postpartum phase. It felt like you created, and you put a lot of energy into creating it before the birth. You created this very sacred vessel. And you knew who was going to be in there with you, and you already were very familiar with their energies, and you had the space kind of set up for it. I really feel like you set a kind of gold standard there.
Totally. Yeah, you prepared not only for the birth but for the postpartum 40 days. You did a lot of preparation, and it was really a joy to be involved in that and support you in that, and see you giving that to yourselves, you and your partner.
Well, it was amazing having you guys as well, because it was like Craig, my husband, said it was like just this like magical new energy coming in every day, and because he'd been in the container, it wasn't like you were separate from it. And so I can't even imagine not having you guys there afterwards. And again, it was, it's like I think in her book Healing Wise, Susan Weed talks about the different types of I guess you'd call it what would you call them, medical help or whatever, and the wise woman tradition is all about nourishing. And it just makes me think of you guys and what you do, because that was everything that you were doing, particularly in that postpartum. It was like, how can we nourish, and again, I think that's another form of space holding in a way, because it's kind of like saying the body knows how to do, how can we just nourish it so that it can do what it needs to do. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's something that can be overlooked a bit in this culture, and where there's a lot of emphasis on the birth, and then things can be quite kind of cold and hard afterwards, or people can have loads and loads of guests over and new energies. And when a mum's so open and kind of raw, and you've just given birth, and all your cells are so much more open and everything's so much more sensitive, it's not a time for busyness, it's a time for nourishing and tenderness, and it's a time for like real grounding. Like in the Ayurvedic tradition, after you've given birth, you've lost a lot of water and earth, and you've got lots of air in you, so you need lots of things to ground that air. And I feel like that's just something we need to promote more and bring in more, so that it becomes part of our culture again, to really nourish that fourth trimester.
It's so true. Like, I think I remember asking a couple of people what was like, do you know Chris Northrop?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's a friend of mine, and I asked her the May before my birth, what is the best thing that I can do? And I'm asking you as a mother, I'm asking you as a, you know, pioneer in women's health and all that, and I'm asking you as a business owner. And she said the 4th trimester.
Okay.
That is the most important thing. Don't worry about preparing for pregnancy. Don't worry about the nursery. Worry about the 4th trimester. Don't book anything for 3 months. You don't know what your pregnancy is going to be like. You don't know what your postpartum is going to be like. Don't expect a thing from yourself. Tell everyone around you, don't expect anything from me during this time, except for nourishing myself and then the baby. She said, your insides will be on your outsides. And that's just, I think that was just the most incredible advice ever. And it felt to me like, it was almost like clockwork, actually, that 4th trimester. I think my hormones were kind of all over the place. I was like in bliss with the baby, and then just kind of like feeling like all of my pieces were all over the place at the same time. Not in a bad way, but just like you go through any kind of rock bottom or cracking open or any kind of initiation, it's like everything gets blasted open and then all the pieces are on the floor. And then you need that integration time to put it back together. And I remember it being like literally, and I wasn't tracking it at the time. It was like a week later I looked back, and on the day, Sunny was born on a Monday, on the Monday, however, after the 4th trimester, I took him into the bath with me and we started playing together. And it was like something had shifted. Like instead of it being like survival almost, and in this like very kind of like wintry cocoon, all of a sudden we were two, not completely separate, but it was my child and I was his mother. And that was like clockwork. And I think I go for a walk now. It's just, I'm sure you guys have as well. Like it's just, everything's blooming. But the flowers that came first, the tulips, they're done. The cherry blossom is almost gone as well. And then the honeysuckle's coming, etc. And it feels like that. It's like I'm just blown away through the pregnancy, and I know I shouldn't be because we are nature, but I'm blown away by nature every day as well. But it just is miraculous, the incredible timing of it. And yeah, so I think that 4th trimester, that's very, very special if you can allow it.
I think we should all be blown away by nature every day.
Totally. Yeah, and it's like you were saying, you know, we are birthing ourselves all the time.
Constantly. It's so true. And I remember, talking to someone, a real wise woman in my life, about the birth. And I was just trying to understand a particular part of the birth where I was a bit perplexed by, and it was like the moment that he came out, literally. And I remember I was holding him and my reaction was, oh my gosh, there's a baby there. Like I just couldn't believe there was a baby. And now I did my birth as consciously as I could. I definitely knew I was pregnant. I definitely knew there was going to be a baby. But I couldn't believe there was a baby. My husband couldn't believe there was a baby. And my friend said to me, because I was thinking like, what is wrong with me that I just like, what happened there? And she was like, how else is someone to respond to a miracle being performed in front of their eyes? And that just like, it was like every bit of my soul landed in my body when she said that. Yeah. I don't even, I feel like I still don't quite grasp the miracle of that. Like, but I think our mind kind of tries to figure things out so much and then thinks that something's wrong when it's just like, oh no, you can't possibly conceive this.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a miracle.
It's a bit like that with life generally, isn't it? Just kind of like, wow, can we fully comprehend this like vast, mysterious thing that we're all in? No, probably not. But
right.
Yeah, just sitting at the majesty of it.
Okay.
And birth is like such a poignant representation of everything.
Right. And you guys, like, this is your work. You see that not every day, because that you'd be very, very run off your feet if it was every day.
It never stops being totally and utterly like, mind-blowing and majestic. Never. I can't imagine it ever being. It's always like kind of stunning in that moment, you know?
Really? And in your experience, is every birth different?
Yeah, every birth is definitely different, but there's a quality, you know, that there's a thread that carries throughout all of them too. But it's unique to a woman. I think, like, in many ways a woman like manifests a particular type of birth, depending on all sorts of different conditions and like life lessons and things inside and outside of her control, and all of that forms a like unique experience that's kind of tailor-made for her. So just as we're all so different, birth is so different. And it's always, of course, like immeasurably powerful and magical and all the things.
And it's so animal, like you were saying. But yeah, being stunned by the miracle and the mystery is, that's always been the same for me at every birth. And it's such a blessing to witness that. So you said about the fourth trimester being really the best bit of advice that you received. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of women will benefit from hearing that. And I wonder if there's anything else, like to close, if there's one tip perhaps it is just that, but for women who are pregnant now and perhaps imminently about to give birth, what would your message be to them? What would you like to say to them at this point?
I would say that your body does know how to do it. Even if you haven't done it before, you do now know how to do it. And the more you can open to that and kind of lean into that and say yes to that while you're in it. And, you know, I do believe that it is possible to have a painless birth. I didn't. And I know that when the pain's there, it feels like the opposite thing that you should do, but that's what my advice would be, just to trust that your body knows how to do it, and that your body's not working against you, it's working for you, and that life knows how to do this. And so the more safe you can feel, the more supported you can feel, the more grounded you can feel. That, I think, is the thing that's going to, it'll happen regardless, but maybe it'll happen. I know I wanted it to happen as quick as I could. That's my advice, to let it happen as quick as it could.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a very beautiful, empowering message. For all of us, and especially women, so pregnant women. So thank you very much.
Thank you too so much.
Yay.